And joining us now here on the KFYR Plus News Desk is Hussein Baranji, a award-winning founder of Baranji and Associates. Now, he specializes in high net worth divorce cases across Los Angeles County and is at the forefront of cases where influencer love stories turn into complex digital asset battles in modern courts. Hussein, thank you and welcome to the News Desk.
Hello, Jay. Great for being here. Thank you for having me on.
You got it. So, why are influencer breakups now starting to resemble shareholder disputes rather than traditional divorces?
Well, I mean, the nature and the platform of the businesses are very unique. You have, and it depends on the content developers. You have couples who both create content. They're both involved in the platform. And when you're going through a divorce, you have to figure out who's going to take the platform, and you got to value it because you're gonna the person who gives the platform away will potentially be compensated for the value. And valuation of those platforms are very difficult. And it's a very unique platform. It's not like any kind of business where the viewership, the followers, I mean, those tend to, it's like a tide. Sometimes it goes well, and sometimes people get upset at one spouse or the other one. And so it's a very difficult platform, very difficult type of business to be able to value. Not a brick and mortar, a store or somebody who's got selling widgets or what have you. It's very difficult.
Right. So, at what point does a couple's online presence legally become a business instead of just content?
Well, I mean, I think any type of platform that generates income, when you have contracts with sponsorships, when these viewerships, these followers generate income, as long as it's generating income, it's an asset that needs to be valued and divided. So at any time that there is some sort of income, that's where the value is, and that needs to be divided.
Hussein, how do courts even begin to value things like TikTok followers or engagement rates or brand goodwill?
So this is the difficulty because traditionally you have two phases. You have income streams before a separation, and then you predict the income stream after the separation. And that's where you start valuing the business. And based on the traditional history of the income, you assess the goodwill, right? So there's a business that has inventory, you have the inventory, you have cash on hand, and then you have the goodwill. With online influencers, I think the bulk of the value is the goodwill. And that goodwill, because it could fluctuate and there is no traditional model that you can rely on. Well, this platform generated this much income in the past, and we suspect it's going to generate the same income in the future. Like I said, there's a lot of perception, backlash from the public, especially when both parties are the personalities on the platforms. It gets very complicated. But that's our job. Our job is to present models to the court, present formulas to the court that make sense for the court to decide, yes, this platform could generate this much income in the future, and therefore it has this much value. But that's where the complexity of these divorces lie.
Is the follower base, is that considered property?
Absolutely. I think it's part of the asset of that platform. I mean, we have to
Okay.
treat each platform as an asset itself, and then the followers would be the value, the what drives the value to that platform. So they are part of the and it's hard to divide it. You can't just take half the viewership, right? The viewership has to follow you, but it is an asset of that platform that generates the income. Absolutely.
What what determines who owns a joint brand? Creative labor, name on account, or even monetization control?
That's a great question. And I think that there are certain personalities out there who have their own individual brands and they have their own individual followers. That's a lot easier because then you can say, well, this the content creator has its own brand, has its own followers. When it comes to joint influencers who are, and we see that a lot of more successful influencers are couples who have that interaction. And that's a very difficult thing to divide. Who really takes that particular platform. And I think the courts look more and more to the content creators who potentially started the platform, who is the personality of the platform, and the fight really becomes who is the predominant figure of that platform who should walk away with that platform. And I think that's kind of the general census that I see the courts utilizing, which is I think it's a right analysis.
Is it fair to ask a judge to predict future ad revenue when platforms can change algorithms overnight?
I mean, I think you have to look at the stream of income. There are certain streams of income that are already set based on contracts, and some of these contracts might have clauses where if there's a viewership or followers that decline, then they might have an out on getting out of those contracts. So I think what we have, there's a short-term valuation and potentially long-term valuation. Short-term valuation is based on the contracts that those influencers already have, and they can rely on that stream of income in the short future. Long-term valuations might be more difficult because they do rely on for future contracts. They rely on future potential followers. To figure out what this business is going to be worth 5 to 10 years down the line, it might be very difficult. But for most businesses anyway, when we do valuations for businesses, we are looking at a short-term valuation. We're looking at a fair market value of a brand, of a business over the next 3 to 5 years typically. So I think it's possible to value these platforms in a way. I think over time the science will get more precise. But at least at this stage, I think there's still mechanisms by figuring out what evaluation of these businesses are going to be in the future, in the near future.
Hossein, I've read that you've warned about hidden digital income. So, what revenue streams are spouses most likely to hide?
Well, I mean, I think the issue is the cryptocurrencies. I think those are very, at least it's really of concern in our practice. And the way digital assets are held, digital currencies are held. There are some hot wallets, cold wallets. I mean, it gets real technical. Are these wallets and where we can easily access? Are they on exchanges like Coinbase? Are they in private exchanges? So when we are trying to assess, where these digital assets are, some are easily traceable. Some we can easily get into and figure out exactly where the asset is and value it. And if somebody really wants to hide it, they can try, but it makes it more difficult. And then we have to look at the movement of money. How do the money, follow the trail of the money to figure out if these private digital assets were purchased, and then try to get in to figure out exactly where they're located and the valuations. So it's a mixed bag. Sometimes it's easy to figure out, and sometimes a lot more difficult to figure out. But those are
Okay.
usually we're talking about digital currency in terms of the
In, you,
assets.
in your opinion, what's the biggest mistake influencers make before marriage when it comes to protecting their brand?
I think there's a big push for prenups in all most affluent individuals are thinking about prenups, or they're thinking about what to do, and have a process set up so that when they do separate, that they're able to do it without a lot of conflict. I think digital personalities on influencers, I'm not thinking about their brand in a business, and I think they need to, and I think they should understand that when they're both part of a brand, it's going to be a very ugly battle to break this brand up and to figure out what the valuation is. So I think it's very important to have a prenup at the onset, especially if they're already influencers to begin with and they know that that's where they want to go and that's their future path, their career. I think it's very important for them, probably more important than any other area, in order to define exactly who is going to walk away with the platform, who's going to walk away with a particular, the content, who owns the content. So the prenup is absolutely very important for individuals, especially social media personalities.
Do you think courts will eventually standardize how digital brands are divided, or will this still be the Wild West era in 5 years?
It's a very factual, intensive analysis. I don't think that you can create a rule particularly for it, just like any other business. We have in a traditional divorce, you have, let's say, one spouse who owns the business, starts a business during the marriage as a community asset, but the court looks at who's really, who's the one driving the business, who's the one operating the business, whose idea was it, whose name is the business is under. So I think these factual analysis is what the courts look at in order to determine how a social website gets a platform gets divided. So I don't think there's going to be a set formula, but I think that through more cases and case law that develops, I think it makes our job a lot easier to know what the courts really anticipate and what they're look at and what they want to hear from the litigants in order to decide how to divide up the asset. But I think over time, the case law will become a little bit more, give us more direction.
And finally, for creators that are listening right now, Hussein, what's the one legal step they should take before co-creating with a partner?
I think having a contract. I mean, even if you are, a prenup is how you divide the asset. But if you can clearly identify certain facts that will help the judge decide in the future, whose idea was this? And not necessarily how do you divide it, but those facts that the courts look at. Whose idea was it? Who's going to create the content? Who potentially will walk away from this? And obviously, we're talking about in the context of a divorce, but there's a lot of creators out there who are not married. So when you're not married, you don't fall within the jurisdiction of the family court. You're in contract with each other. So having some clear understanding of your obligations, ownership, content creations, and in the event of a separation, I think a contract is absolutely necessary. And in a parties who are getting married, a prenuptial agreement is absolutely necessary. So having something in writing, it would help the parties in the future.
All right, Hussein, thank you so much for the valuable insight today. Real interesting
Thank you.
look behind the scenes and how these creators go about after well, maybe a not so amicable breakup. Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Jay, for having me on.
You got it.